Excellent. So this is the trailer of the exhibition, Lukasz, which perhaps you have not seen yet. So it's great to see it with all our audience. So thanks, Gilby. So now we are ready. It's 9:20, so we can really start. Thank you very much, Lukasz, for being here tonight. So we are prepared for questions. I will ask the first two questions. Then Luke and Tony will come in as normal, and then Manuel and Ichigo and Gilby will start collecting the questions from the audience. So audience, please start writing your questions on the chat, on Facebook, on Speaker, YouTube, whatever. We are going to collect them and later on give them to Lukasz. But I will start straight away with the first question for Lukasz, which is something which I already mentioned, but now we are going to get to the depth of it. And the question is, who is Boromir, first of all? And more specifically, what do you think is the kind of heroism which is embodied in the character of Boromir? In what scenes or passages in The Lord of the Rings we see his particular presented in the novel? Thank you very much, Lukasz, for being here tonight, and the floor is yours.
Well, thank you also for your patience. Now, this is the
Lukasz?
first time ever in my life that I had any kind of problems of that sort. I might say that at first I didn't like Boromir. I first read the Lord of the Rings when I was, I think it must have been about 10. I read it in Polish, and I didn't like him. Of course, the reason for that is that because, well, after all, he's a traitor. He's a traitor of the ring bearer, traitor of the quest. But then, having read The Lord of the Rings several times after that, I realized that, well, aren't we all traitors? Well, I can speak for myself, of course, but I'm a full-time traitor. Yes, I consciously betray, well, maybe not the ring bearer, but the cross bearer. Yes, and I do that on the regular basis. So that makes me a traitor as well. And in consequence, I feel I have a very close affinity to the character of Boromir. I'm very much like him. In certain aspects, of course, I'm not a warrior, but in many ways, I feel I have a lot of things in common with him. And to me, he's every inch a human. Yes, he's a literary character, of course, but he's a character whose portrayal is very, very realistic, yes, in every sense, and that is one of the features of Tolkien's fiction that is hardly ever spoken of, but I think it deserves more attention. But anyway, Boromir is the son of Denethor and brother of Faramir. He's a son of the stewards of Gondor. He himself is the captain of Gondor. He's the national hero, we can say, and he's a man of great strength, a man of great valor. He's also very proud, and this is very much emphasized from the moment of his first appearance in the book. And I have a few quotes, and I just briefly look at them. So in the second chapter of the second book, the Council in Rivendell, he's described as a tall man with a fair and noble face, dark-haired and grey-eyed, proud and stern of glance. And a little bit later, he was cloaked and booted as if for a journey on horseback. And indeed, though his garments were rich and his cloak was lined with fur, they were stained with long travel. He had a collar of silver in which a single white stone was set. His locks were shorn about his shoulders. On the baldric, he wore a great horn tipped with silver. Tipped, not tripped, of course, with silver that now was laid upon his knees. And before he speaks, we have the following words: Boromir stood up tall and proud before them. Yes, so he's right from the very beginning. We can see that these depictions are highly conventionalized, and they may, well, inadvertently remind the reader of some great heroes of the past. Yes, the heroes of early medieval literature, characters like Beowulf, Birknoth, two great characters from Old English literature, but also Sigurd, Roland, and so on. So the heroes with whom he certainly has a lot in common, not just on account of his physical appearance. They're all proud, they all confident, I would even say overconfident on several occasions. And also, all of them die in combat, or in the case of Sigurd, otherwise slain. Yes, so they certainly do not die of old age. Yes, although Birknoth is very likely to be more than 60 years old, but this is an exception. They all die very young. Well, at least three of them, with the exception of Sigurd, are described as being explicitly patriotic in their deeds. Yes, and very often we see their loyalty to the ruler also accentuated, to the ruler and also to the people that they are sworn to protect. And I have a quote from a very interesting book by Brian Murdoch, the Germanic hero, which doesn't mention Boromir, obviously, but it does mention a lot of characters in Germanic literature which are who are very much like Boromir. So Murdoch says the Germanic hero is a warrior of stature and importance within a feudal society. Now, this is rather significant, I think, because it shows him as a member of a certain group of people. Could be a tribe in some earlier texts, could be a nation. And he's normally shown in foreground action, carrying out a task of importance, which it is his duty to complete, driven by an inner imperative, which is dependent also upon the social constraints which he accepted. So his role is very often seen within some larger network of connections, also political connections. And we see this political dependence, whether on the tribal level, national level, in several works dealing with the Germanic peoples, so to say, in general. We see it in Tacitus, in his Germania. We see it in Beowulf. We see it in the Battle of Maldon, for instance, when the Viking envoy approaches Birknoth, the leader of the English forces. He says that, well, not the Viking envoy, of course, but Birknoth says that he acts on behalf of King Ethelred. Yes, so it's this constant reminder of the loyalty. We also see that in the Song of Roland. Yes, of course, Roland is the nephew of Charlemagne, not historically, yes, but and he's loyal to him, although he's also quite independent in his actions. And these kind of reverberations of patriotic feelings, also pride, overconfidence, may often be seen in the words, seen or heard in the words of Boromir. And there are a few more quotes from The Lord of the Rings. This is when Boromir sees the ring for the first time in Rivendell. We are told that his eyes glinted as he gazed at the golden ring. The halfling, he muttered. These are his first words. But then immediately he says, "Is then the doom of Minas Tirith come at last?" So one of his immediate thoughts is that of his people. Yes, he remains loyal to them, even though we know that the ring might already be doing terrible things to him. And then again, at the council, he says, "I was not sent to beg any boon, but to speak only the meaning, to seek only the meaning of a riddle." He answers proudly. "Yet we are hard pressed, and the sword of Elendil would be held beyond our hope. So in this case, yeah, pride comes first, but then immediately after that, we are hard pressed. We, the people of Gondor. Yes, so he only sees himself in the context, or mainly sees himself in the context of political connections and so on. And then the second scene in which we can actually see quite easily how he feels about his people is what I call the tempting scene. That is when Boromir approaches Frodo on the slopes of Aemon and he quite explicitly asks Frodo to actually either go with him to Minas Tirith or later to actually give him the ring. He says, "We do not desire the power of wizard lords, only strength to defend ourselves." Yes, we ourselves. Yes, he often uses these words in plural. Yes, meaning of course the people of Gondor. Strength in a just cause. And behold, in our need, chance brings to light the ring of power. It is a gift, I say, a gift to the foes of Mordor. Yes, it is mad not to use it, to use the power of the enemy against him. And then the fearless, the ruthless, these alone will achieve victory. This overconfidence is now budding in him, is just coming to the surface. Now, what could not a warrior do in this hour, the great leader? What could not Aragorn do? So he's mentions Aragorn here, but immediately, or if he refuses, why not Boromir? The ring could give me power of command. Command, of course, there are his people always there in the background. How would I drive the host of Mordor, and all the men would flock to my banner? So yes, on the one hand, he's confident. On the one hand, he seeks fame in combat, but he never forgets about his own people. Of course, this is very deceptive because soon afterwards, he claims that if any mortals have claim to the ring, it is the men of Numenor, and not halflings. It is not yours, save by unhappy chance. It might have been mine. It should be mine. Give it to me. So this confidence, this urge to outdo other people in combat, to be the leader, to be at the forefront of any military action of any kind, really comes to the surface. But then, of course, we have to see that otherwise Boromir acts valiantly and nobly. Yes, we see him carry the hobbits in the snow. We see him try to help Gandalf on the bridge in Khazad-dûm. He fights to protect Merry and Pippin. And also in what his brother says about him, Faramir, we also get a picture of him as a great warrior, a noble man, and one you can definitely trust. Yes. I was also thinking that his bond with Faramir is also very interesting because it seems to reflect some kind of duality of heroic identity that we also seen in one of his minor works, Tolkien's minor works, The Homecoming of Bergthnoth, in which we have two Anglo-Saxon retainers. One of them is Todhelm, who's sort of more heroically orientated minstrel, and there's the other one called Tidwald, yes, who's much more pragmatic in the way he sees warfare in general. Now, in the Homecoming of Bergthnoth, Tolkien does not reject one in favor of another. Yes, and I must also refer to Marjorie Burns, who says that this character pairing is often used, maybe not often, but quite a few occasions used by Tolkien to build a sense of depth and complexity. And so by revealing the strengths and the weaknesses, he brings to the spotlight the virtues and vices that are found in the character's counterpart. So in this case, Boromir and Faramir could be seen as a pair, complementary in a sense. The same with Thorfinn and Tidwald, and they also are kind of, I would say, inextricable components of Tolkien's own vision of heroism. Yes, on the one hand, Tolkien is raised on the tales of heroic past, but on the other one, his life is also marked by some tragic memories of the Great War. So he might enjoy reading about great heroes like Beowulf or Boromir in The Lord of the Rings, but then he himself knows what it means to fight, what it means to be a soldier. So when it comes to the two sons of Denethor, Boromir naturally represents the more kind of a traditional model of early medieval heroism, not only Germanic, but since Tolkien was very much inspired by all sorts of works of Anglo-Saxon or Norse origin, then naturally Germanic heroes first spring to mind. But Faramir, on the other hand, is also an able fighter, but he's more of a scholar, and both of them seem to be very close to Tolkien's own heart. But of course, it is Faramir that Tolkien seems to identify with a number of times in his letters. So that's my brief introduction to Boromir as a character.
Thank you very much, Lukasz. I don't know if you all follow, but the depth that Lukasz is able to touch, even in the past, even in this 10, 15 minutes, is amazing. I'm in awe, to be honest. So I will directly move to the second question. Can you hear me? I don't know whether there is some weird sound, but anyway. You can hear me. Okay, so I will go for the second question, okay, which, if you want, we are going to zoom in onto the two crucial scenes in which we see, if you want, the tragedy of Boromir, which is, of course, the scene of the temptation first, and then the scene after the temptation, which begins, first of all, of course, with the heroic rescue of Merry and Pippin. So the question that I have is basically related to what is, I think, the standard view of Boromir as a bad character. You already mentioned that to a certain extent. He's a very human character. He's a traitor. And he's, of course, all of that. But it's not just that, because as we know, the narrative arc of Boromir does not end with the scene of the temptation. We have something coming after. So what I would like to ask you for tonight is, yes, first to say something to us about the scene of the temptation and the dialogue with Frodo, to see what kind of, if you want, ethical and heroic frameworks are competing in that particular scene. But also, if you could say something more also on the following scene, starting from the heroic deeds that he will perform to rescue Merry and Pippin. How does Boromir character develop in these two apparently so different moments?
Yes, right. So I'll start with the temptation scene, as I call it, because it's the one that reveals, in my opinion, reveals two models of heroism that we find in the works of Tolkien. One that I would call more traditional Germanic, pre-Christian kind of heroism that we find in Boromir, and the other one is more like a Christian. I know it's anachronistic, sort of, in the Lord of the Rings, but this is what I call kind of a Christian heroic stance. So when you take Boromir and Frodo, I think they also, just like Boromir and Faramir, or Tolkien and T-World, they might correspond to the two conflicting sides of Tolkien's inner dialogue. They just like the voices also in the short story Leave by Nigel, where we see the artist Nigel and his neighbor Parish. Yes, they both are the inner voices of Tolkien, as it's often suggested. Now, in the case of Boromir and Frodo, the more emotional and less rational side of human nature, of course, is reflected in the impulsive character of Boromir, and the more sensible, much more self-controlled one seems to find its outlet in Frodo. Now, Boromir makes a very good example of what I'll say is Tolkien's creative reinvention of this traditional archetypal image of the early medieval hero. He's, as we saw earlier, grand of stature, a man with regal-like manners, but also, as has been observed, he is certainly not free from the enticements of what the ancient Greeks referred to as hubris. Yes, this overconfidence. And we see that particularly in the sense of his lack of humility, overestimation of his capabilities. Now, his primary motivation is, of course, the safety and well-being of his people, but also, and I would say perhaps just as importantly, is his military reputation that he's likely to enjoy in effect of his deeds on the battlefield. Now, Frodo in this scene is the complete opposite. There's no arrogance in him or any other major defect in his attitude. He humbly, I mean, not quite eagerly, accepts the responsibility for destroying the ring in the fires of Mount Doom. And also Frodo's conviction that he should complete his quest on his own. And he says, I suppose I must go alone. If I am to do that to save the Shire. It's not dictated by any hubristic wish to surpass others in valor and in endurance, as we have, for example, in the case of Beowulf. It's I would say it's a kind of practically a Christ-like conviction that he should accept his fate for the sake of all the free peoples of Middle-earth, and so that he doesn't want to put this great burden on anyone else's shoulders. And this difference between Boromir and Frodo, I think it's here sort of accentuates one another's strengths and weaknesses. That is to say, if we look at Boromir, we see what is, in a sense, lacking in Frodo. I'm not saying that it's Frodo's weakness in any sense, but definitely we do not have this pride, this great physical strength in the Hobbit of Shire. And then if we look at Frodo, on the other hand, we do not find in him this overconfidence, this great strength and pride, yes, that we find in Boromir. And then, of course, following the temptation, we see Boromir fight to the death. Yes, he fights to protect the halflings. Yes, the hobbits, Merry and Pippin. Of course, we see that in the film. There's not much in the book, but that's it doesn't make the book any worse, of course, than the film. And in fact, sometimes what is not seen but only sort of mentioned in retrospection is just as important as the things that we can see. And so it is in this case. Now, what we saw earlier is the scene of Boromir's temptation. Yes, he's tempted by the ring, and well, it can't be denied that what follows, what is the effect of it, is his fall. But this is not the end of the story. Yes, this is what probably I sort of imagined when I was reading The Lord of the Rings as a 10-year-old kid. I didn't really pay much attention to what happens afterwards. Yes, he was a traitor. He deserved that. He died. Enough. Yes, that's it. But there's much more to this, and I think this account of Boromir's fall and redemption is once again a model combination of what, on one hand, is a traditional heroic ethos of the early medieval world, and also indisputably Christian philosophy of atonement, or if we see this scene that I'm just about to refer to, also kind of a consecration of what Boromir does. Now, he realizes the gravity of his deed on the slopes of Amonhan, but fortunately he does not succumb to any kind of despair or moral erosion, but firmly decides to atone for his transgression at the first possible opportunity. He rushes to protect Merry and Pippin from being captured by the orcs, and this is, of course, a truly heroic feat, yes, for which he comes to pay the highest possible price. But before he dies, with the last ounce of his strength, he also succeeds in confessing his wrongdoing to Aragorn, who manages to assure Boromir of his victory, which of course is a moral victory, also not just the military one. The Gondorian then passes away with in a state of grace, a spiritual grace, with a faint smile on his face and a conviction that his sins were ultimately forgiven. And this is the brief passage once again from the third book of The Lord of the Rings, the first chapter, which says, Aragorn knelt beside him. Boromir opened his eyes and strove to speak. At last slow words came. I tried to take the ring from Frodo, he said. I am sorry, I have paid. He's glanced straight to his fallen enemies. 20 at least lay there. They have gone, the halflings. The orcs have taken them. I think they are not dead. Orcs bound them. He paused and his eyes closed wearily. After a moment he spoke again. Farewell, Aragorn. Go to Minas Tirith and save my people. I have failed. No, said Aragorn. You have conquered. You have gained such a victory. Be at peace. Minas Tirith shall not fall. Boromir smiled. Which way did they go? Was Frodo there? Said Aragorn. But Boromir did not speak again. Now, we may wonder what Aragorn actually means by you have conquered, you have gained such a victory. Well, surely it cannot be just the military deeds, yes, the 20 orcs or so, yes, that Boromir has slain. But I think before we turn to the words of Aragorn, we should first once again have a look at what Boromir actually says. Now, first of all, he admits to have taken the ring, that he tried to take the ring, yes. Well, he doesn't have to say so. It wouldn't change anything as far as the chain of events is concerned. Aragorn may never know, and of course, he never tells anybody. And Faramir only learns it from Frodo, yes. And as we read the book, then of course we realize that reading the appendices that Frodo is the kind of a fictional narrator. So Aragorn doesn't tell anyone about what happened. The other thing is that he says he's sorry and that he has failed, and that he paid for it. Now, what does he actually mean when he says, "I have failed"? Does he mean that he did not prevent the orcs from capturing the hobbits, or that he will not come to Minas Tirith? Now, he very likely means both, but there is one more dimension to this, and I think it's a spiritual one. Now, in the first scene of The Two Towers, Boromir is very much like the prodigal son when he says to his father, "I have sinned against heaven and against you." With a quote from the 15th chapter of Luke. Or King David when he says in the second book of Samuel, "I have committed a grave sin by doing this." So, of course, well, notwithstanding the brevity of what he says, this, or what they say in the scene, this exchange of words between Aragorn and Boromir is, we could say, a genuine act of confession, and confession in the sacramental sense of it. So Aragorn acts as a kind of a confessor, and Boromir is the penitent. Now, Aragorn, we know otherwise, is kind of a Christ figure. So he's, of all the characters in the Lord of the Rings, he's evidently the best person to act in persona Christi, yes, during the confession. But then, what about Boromir's confession? Is it not too brief? Well, not if we see it as a process, yes. And when we read what happens in the final chapter of the first volume and just the beginning of the second one of the Lord of the Rings, of course, we have a 3-volume edition. We see that we can easily detect some echoes of the so-called 5 essentials of a good confession, as they practiced in the Roman Catholic Church. And these are: 1, the examination of conscience; 2, contrition; 3, firm purpose of amendment; 4, the confession itself; and 5, the fulfillment of penance. Now, how does Boromir manage to do all that? Well, let's have a look. Now, this first phase, the examination of conscience, is naturally brief in The Lord of the Rings. It's triggered by his guilt-laden conscience and the unexpected external factors, such as the surprised assault by the orcs. Then there is this, he realizes his responsibility. It comes to him progressively. The first rays of hope in his conduct may even be seen when he accuses Frodo of treachery. Now, then he catches his foot on a stone and falls flat on his face. And I think this moment of humiliation, or perhaps it was a kind of a divine intervention, we have some of that in The Lord of the Rings. This appears to be kind of a catalyst of his repentance. Things do not go smooth. Boromir becomes aware of his sinfulness in a kind of an inward struggle, which make the detection of his sins a rather difficult task, yes, with a high risk of being superficial or even selective, yes. But then when he's inquired by Aragorn during the encounter in the first chapter of The Two Towers after the temptation, no, sorry, this is still the last chapter of the Fellowship of the Ring. At first, when he meets Aragorn, he doesn't want to give a full account of his dealings with Frodo. And after Aragorn has questioned him, Boromir concludes simply by stating, "I will say no more yet." But this is what I see in his case as the kind of examination of his conscience. It's a process. It doesn't happen quickly. Now, the second stage is contrition. Yes, and to see the roots of his contrition, now we have to go back to his argument with Frodo. Now, possibly he tries to deceive the ring bearer, but the words that he utters after he falls And the tears that come to his eyes when he's lying upon his face, I think they're quite a strong indication that something in his heart is already aching. Although it's still too early for him to fully acknowledge his own weakness of character, and well, then he chooses to blame his emotional storm on some indefinite madness. Yes, he says, "A madness took me, but it has passed." Yes, as if it were not his fault. So he knows that he has done something wrong, but then he's still unable to take full responsibility for his deed. But these feelings are gradually budding in his heart, and after the first encounter with Aragorn, we see Boromir put his head in his hands, and we see him sitting as if bowed with grief. These are the exact words used by Tolkien. Now, this contrition might seem obviously somewhat flowed, motivated.
So we have lost Lukasz for a moment.
Yes, I believe, yes.
So we need to wait for him to come back.
Yes.
I don't know if you follow what. Meanwhile, I will make a few comments. I don't know whether you follow what Lukasz was talking about, but the kind of depth that he managed to reach in the different scenes is quite amazing. Okay, because not summing up for myself. I mean, in the beginning, he went on and basically traced the whole Germanic ancestry of his back. So you're saved.
He's coming back. He's coming back.
You don't have to hear to me again. But the depth is amazing. I go back and listen to it again. It's amazing. Sorry, Lukasz, we lost you for a moment.
Okay, I'm back.
Perfect. Please go on. You were talking about yes, the last stage of the temptation.
Yeah.
Sorry, of the confession.
Connected. Okay. Now you can hear me.
Yes,
we can.
yes.
Okay, good. Yes. Due to the technical problems, I'm using my wife's phone, so I must have pressed something. I can just quote Boromir saying, "I'm sorry, I have paid."
Yeah. Yes.
But don't expect you to make a confession at the moment. So anyway, this feeling of remorse is budding in his heart, yes, and as I was saying, this contrition might seem to be kind of flowed, motivated by other external factors, but it is honest, yes, and it stems from the goodness of his heart. And then if we look at these last-minute words, "I am sorry, I have paid." Now, they are nothing more and nothing less than the ultimate expression of his sincere repentance, yes, his contrition. Now, then we have the third essential of the good confession, and that is the firm purpose of amendment. Of course, it requires a conscious decision on the part of the penitent to dispense with a sin, and at least put an effort to lessen the intensity of his wrongdoings. And we may see in Boromir's ultimately failed effort to protect the hobbits as an unsuccessful attempt on his part to amend his way of life. But this kind of reading, I think, will be sort of unnecessarily shifting the accent from the intentions to the efficiency of his actions. But we can be, I think, almost certain that his purpose of amendment, if it's not clearly articulated, is genuine and firm. The fourth thing is the confession itself, and as I said earlier, Aragorn plays the part of a confessor. He's not only acting in persona Christi, but he also absolves Boromir of his sins. But as a priest should do during and after the confession, of course, he keeps it all secret. Yes, this is what confessors are all obliged to do under the penalty of excommunication. There's no fear that Aragorn will be excommunicated, but he nonetheless does not tell anybody. And I also want to draw attention to the fact that Aragorn's words actually closely resemble those that may be heard in the confessional. What he says at the end, "Be at peace," as an example. That this is followed by the words "Minas shall not fall," but they evidently echo the kind of the so-called dismissal formula. Go in peace. Yes, that's that you can hear in the confessional at the end, of course, provided that everything goes well. And the only difference is that the fact that, of course, on account of his multiple injuries, Boromir is no longer able to go anywhere. Now, the fifth essential, which we do not actually see in this scene, but for a very good reason, is the fulfillment of penance. Yes. So, to cut a long story short, if you have done something wrong to a certain person, you must go and say that you're sorry. And if you, stolen the money, then you need to give it back, and so on. Now, this in the Roman Catholic Church has no force when the penitent is dying. Now, this is the only case when it doesn't work, and that's exactly what happens in the case of Boromir. And I think we can also have a look at Boromir and this confession scene. In the context, we can see it in the context of early medieval literature and also the biblical context. Yes. Now, I would say that in medieval literature we have, of course, different models of heroism, but I would just like to take a look at two of them in Western medieval literature. The two models, one of which I would call hubristic, and the other one chivalric. Now, the first one could be described as being sort of essentially pre-Christian, so as not to say pagan, and it frequently finds its embodiment in such characters as Beowulf, Sigurd, yes, the kind of heroes that fight for their own glory. The second one is, it's not always essentially Christian in the way it's depicted, but we can see a lot of examples of this kind of heroism in chivalric literature in the Middle Ages. So we have all different knights of the Round Table, Lancelot, Gawain, and so on. But there are also, I would say, a lot of prominent figures that are somewhere in between. Yes, that they are no longer pagan, but it's mainly due to the fact that, of course, they are Christian. Yes, they were born to Christian parents. They were baptized. A good example of that might be the character of Roland. Yes, he's every inch a Christian warrior. But then on the other hand, the way he acts certainly reminds us of those early medieval heroes of the pre-Christian era. He's still very much hubristic in their words, in their deeds, even though they no longer pagan. But an important thing is that they also turn out to be pointedly Christian, yes, in the final moments of their life. And we see that perhaps most glaringly in the character I've just mentioned, that is Roland, yes, Charlemagne's nephew, not historically, but in the Song of Roland, he's described as Charlemagne's nephew. Now, he dies on the battlefield after he refused to call for the reinforcements. Yes, and the reason why he doesn't want to do it is because he doesn't want to be accused of cowardice. Now, before he dies, however, he looks at his dead companions and he realizes the gravity of his decision. And he prays to God and is forgiven. And a very similar chain of events, I think, could be found in the Battle of Maldon, the Old English poem that Tolkien studied a lot. He also lectured on the Battle of Maldon, and we have the main character there is Ealdorman Byrhtnoth, who willingly withdraws his troops from the battlefield. He was at a sort of strategically at an advantage. But he withdraws his troops so that the Vikings could go across the fort, on the other side of the river, so that they could simply have a fair fight. Well, that's what in modern sports terminology we could call a fair play, but strategically it's a huge mistake, and he pays for it. He pays with his life and also the lives of those who were there with him. However, before he dies, he turns his eyes towards heaven and begins to pray, asking for forgiveness. Now, these two figures, and I can assure you there are more, I call the penitent thief figures. Yes, naturally, in this alluding to the passage in Luke when Christ is crucified and there are two criminals on his two sides. And one of them is, of course, abusing Christ. He says, "Are you not Christ? Save yourself and us as well." But then there is the other one, the good thief, who rebukes him. And he says, "Have you no fear of God at all? You got the same sentence as he did. But in our case, we deserved it. Yes, we are paying for what we did. But this man has done nothing wrong." And then he says to Christ, "Jesus, remember me when you come to your kingdom." To which Christ answers, "In truth, I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise." So they are criminals, these two men, and we can assume that they must have done terrible things to be crucified. But then, just shortly before they die, they both die, but only one of them feels sorry for his deeds. Shortly before death, he is actually forgiven. Yes, given a promise of an afterlife, right? And it's, I think, hard not to see Boromir as that kind of a penitent thief figure. Well, he of course errs terribly when he tries to take the ring from Frodo, but as we can see, these hubristic tendencies that we can see in his behavior are very much like those heroes of the past. Yes, Byrhtnoth and Roland. He also dies in combat. Before his death, he asks for forgiveness. Now, we know that this criminal in the Gospels was forgiven, and so was Roland. Unfortunately, we don't know anything about Byrhtnoth. Yes, we only know that he dies. There are no elements that could be described as supernatural in the Battle of Maldon. Now, there is no information of Boromir's ultimate salvation in the Lord of the Rings, but I think there are certain clues that, despite his crime, but thanks to his pre-mortem confession, possibly he may have actually followed in the footsteps of the penitent thief, and perhaps the most obvious then being the fact that his body is not buried. Yes, he's not buried. He's put in a boat, and so his body is not in any way confined to the earth. Yes, so somehow
this can symbolically for a moment, because the final question that we wanted to ask is exactly on the final episode. So if you don't mind, I would like to ask
Yes.
Ante to ask his question, because this is really a question on the final moment, which is very particular. You already started to introduce it, but I think we can really conclude this beautiful, deep evening with the departure of Boromir. But first, I would like to ask Ante to come in with this question, because this question is exactly on this.
Yes.
Okay. I would like to focus on the burial scene and the departure. Where do these scenes come from, and what do they represent?
Hey, yes. Thank you for the question. Yeah. Now, thank you for the question. Where does it come from? Well, we don't know the all sorts of different possibilities. One thing is that when you look at this burial scene in the first chapter of the Two Towers, I think many of us can see that it must have been somehow modeled on the works, the similar burials in the works that Tolkien knew himself, read a number of times. We have a boat burial in the poetic Edda, in the scene when Odin says farewell to his son Balder. We have also in the story of Sigurd in the Volsunga saga, and also in the poem in the old Edda, the poetic Edda, in which Odin comes to claim the body of Sinfjotli, the son of Sigmund, and he takes it in a boat, and they sail away and disappear. Also, you might be familiar with the image of King Arthur sailing to Avalon, and we don't really know whether he died there or not. Of course, there's a hope that he will, that one day he will return when Britain is in need. Apparently, it hasn't been yet, but because he has not returned. But I'm sure you know this image very well. There are also quite well-known paintings, and Tolkien must have seen, probably saw, the painting by Sir Francis Dixie, The Funeral of a Viking, yes, which is, I think, partly modelled on, I think, the most important literary source in which we have a boat burial scene, and that is Beowulf, of course. Not just one burial scene. There are, in fact, as many as 3 or 4, depending on how you look at them. And very importantly, it starts with a boat burial. And of course, we have those famous words when the body of Shilshething sails away. The poet says, yes, we don't know who received this cargo. Yes, we don't know where the body went, which in some way I think expresses the uncertainty of the early medieval people, sort of half pagan, half Christian, trying to imagine, what happens to man after death. And of course, this is also reflected in what we feel today. We don't know what happens to man. Yes, we can believe or we can not, but we do not know with any greater certainty. And there is one more important thing. Well, Tolkien was writing this chapter. Excuse me. Some small technical problems again. Tolkien was writing this chapter, we know, in 1941, in late 1941, early 1942. and this is the time when the famous excavations in Sutton Hoo took place. There's been recently a film titled The Dig, which deals with these excavations. I haven't seen it yet, but we know that Tolkien was very much interested in it. Not the film, of course, but the excavations. We know that he subscribed to the archaeological journal Antiquity, and in 1940, in March, there was a series of articles about these excavations, and we know that Tolkien subscribed to this journal. We know that he was excited to have received a copy of it, so it must have provided him with some kind of an spark, an inspiration to write his this beautiful passage in which we see the body of Boromir buried in a boat. I hope this answers your question.
Lukasz, I mean, this is amazing. I don't know, again, the depth we have reached tonight is, we have reached a level of complexity and depth which is, I think, almost unparalleled in what we have done so far. So, Lukasz, thank you very much. You really showed us how behind even an apparently, if you want, not really minor, but less important character like Boromir, there is a universe. We actually got a lot of questions tonight for you, Lukasz, but we don't have time because it's already 10:15. Also, but I will try also only to ask one question, trying to put together everything, because some of the we received really a lot of questions, but some of them in a way have already been addressed during your talk. I will only ask one question, actually, which came from Bernardo Dal Seno, okay? And I'm asking this simply because some of the other questions, which are all very relevant, have already been addressed. But I think this question poses a problem which I think is interesting, okay? Which is, if you want, an historical question. And the question is, I have the impression that Boromir was a great hero, but he was born in the wrong times, and he found himself on the wrong place. What do you think? And I'm asking this question especially on the first part, which is the question, the history. So what kind of, what is the historical position, if you want, of Boromir? Because as we know, with the end of the Return of the King, it's the beginning of the era of the man. And Boromir, to a certain extent, is closer to the future man than Aragorn, who instead belongs to the past, or at least that's what it seems. So my question is really, where does he fit Boromir? Is he a man of the past, or is he a man of the future from the perspective of the Lord of the Rings? Which is, in a way, it's Bernardo's question, we slightly rephrased.
Okay, well, first of all, I don't think he's out of his time, and well, just try to imagine what sort of things could have happened if he hadn't tried to take the ring from Frodo. Now imagine that he doesn't do that, and then Frodo still doesn't know what to do, whether he should go to Mordor or to Minas Tirith. And then the hobbits, Merry and Pippin, are taken by the orcs, which diverts Sauron's attention to these two. He sees Pippin in the Palantir, and it starts an incredible chain of events. So he's there where he should be, at the place that Tolkien sort of thought to be most fitting for him. But historically, I think it might be a little bit anachronistic to think of him as a man of the past, in the sense that Tolkien said that the events in the Lord of the Rings. Now this is our Earth, but this is a different time. This was ages before the times that we live in now. So in a sense, of course, he only is a kind of a prefiguration of the kind of heroes that we have later on in the Middle Ages. But then, if you only take this Middle Earth perspective, then well, it's hard to say, because the age of man, the fourth age, comes, and he's no longer there in Middle Earth. He has left the confines of Middle Earth. I guess that there will be more people like him in the future, of course, if we imagine the future of Middle Earth, because as I was saying in the beginning, he's every inch a human, and of course certain cultural roles may change, the perspectives may shift, but this way or the other, there will always be people like Boromir. Perhaps they may act differently, but there will always be people who will be, on the one hand, loyal to the Lord, to their king, also trying to protect the people that they sworn to protect. But at the same time, we will find that the certain flaws in their behavior, in what they do, even though they, on the whole, like Boromir, really good people, and I mean deep at heart. Because of course, if you were to judge him only by what he does in the last chapter of the Fellowship of the Ring, then of course you are just like me at the age of 10, not liking Boromir at all for what he did.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Lukasz. I would like to continue for many other hours talking about the character, and we got so many questions, which is a bit of a pity to end here. But we have a strict rule, which we can do more than an hour. We are just well beyond an hour now, and we need to go now and check how the landing on Mars has gone, which
yes,
a historical moment, which we are in a way we have missed. But listen, I wanted to thank you again. We are one of the goals of this series is to go deeper and deeper and deeper, and that's, if you want, the beauty of the Lord of the Rings. It's a never-ending cave. Yes, we have a question saying we should have a second moment with you just for the questions, okay, Lukasz? So that's the suggestion we just got here. Perhaps we will. But that said, for now, thank you very much again for being with us tonight. Thanks for all the public who followed us and for giving us the technical problems we had tonight. But as always, as in the case of Boromir, we have seen that even beyond the difficulties, there is a path of salvation and a path of beauty. And so thank you very much, Lukasz. I'm very personally glad that you are with us, and thank you very much.
Thank you. My pleasure. My pleasure. It was wonderful.
Thanks a lot.
Goodbye.
Thank you, Lukasz. I would also like to thank everybody who listened and followed the live stream tonight. You were a lot again, so we are very happy about that. And we want to remind you about our next live show on Radio Brea. We will be live next Wednesday, on the 24th of February, with the Tolkien Lab, with the friends from Studio Filosofico. No, it's not Studio Filosofico. It's Istituto Filosofico Studi Tomistici, and AIST, Associazione Italiana Studi Tolkieniani. And the week after that, so I believe it will be the 25th of February, we will go live again with the Compagnia di Radio Brea. So please follow us, listen to us, guys, and if you want, you can also make an offer to our web radio on our coffee account. Thank you so much for the evening, and see you next time. Bye.